So then coming full circle then for you and I think anyone who's really thinking about this on a considering the strength of the court, the Supreme Court, really these four seats that are coming up eventually over the next 4 to 8 years. That's it. That's the most important thing in this election. As we continue to build
Right.
on all those other policies, progressive policies we want.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now, I mean, the Supreme Court has asserted, all kinds of insane rights or powers. The power to decide what the president can do or can't do with regard to war, what Congress can and can't do with regard to war, I mean, they're micromanaging this country at a level that, and again, I don't want to deify the founders. A lot of them were very screwed up people, but they're rolling over in their graves. I mean, and frankly, I think every democracy around the world, people who are well informed about how our Supreme Court operates relative to our country are pretty shocked by it, in other advanced democracies. And this is a topic that gets virtually no discussion because it requires a certain level of information that, we're not teaching in schools.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I wrote the book on equal protection, which was which is now actually a textbook in some colleges, about how the court took power, how corporations the subtitle is How Corporations Became People and What You Can Do to Fight Back. But it's basically a history of, the court and this kind of power. But the bottom line is that if in the only thing that can stand up to organize power and organize money is organized people. And we need to organize. And historically, the way that we organized was through unions. The union movement was destroyed by Ronald Reagan and benignly neglected by Democrats ever since, particularly with the DLC and all that kind of thing. And so, frankly, I think the only option we have right now is to organize politically, and that means, how do you do that? Do you try and take over the Green Party? Well, they would love that, but they're not a force in American politics. The Democratic Party is a billion-dollar machine that is wide open. BC, you couldn't do that with CNN. Hey, let's have a progressive takeover. No, it's not going to happen. But with the Democratic Party, yes, it not only could it happen, but there are a lot of people in the Democratic Party, particularly the Congressional Progressive Caucus, who would love to see it happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was talking to Bakari Sellers from North Carolina, and he was speaking to that exact thing where, this move that Bernie Sanders has made, essentially transforming his campaign into a quasi-national progressive movement to keep people galvanized and mobilized. Bakari is a Hillary Clinton supporter, and when I mentioned the strength of what Bernie Sanders' new position could bring, Sellers was the first one to applaud it because he said when he was in office, there was nothing there to help support him as a progressive. And he would love, despite his love and support for Hillary Clinton, he would absolutely love to see a progressive movement that is strong enough to actually leverage strength on a state-by-state and a nationwide level. And from what you're saying is that this is where we need to put our energy and our focus. And I remember the conversation we had previously about your focus on movement politics, or movements in general. What's the next play from where Bernie Sanders is leaving us to movement politics? What do you see? What do we need to do next?
Well, Bernie's out. If I'm reading right what I'm seeing in the media, I haven't had a conversation with Bernie or his staff about this, but it looks to me like what he's doing is making a serious effort to get progressives elected around the country, mm-hmm. and at everything from school board all the way up to U.S. Senate. And more power to him in that. And we're going to start putting as many of those progressive candidates on our programming as we can, particularly as we head into the campaign season, help them, get exposure and do fundraising and whatnot. But it can't. But the other half of Bernie's message, which people love to stand up and applaud, and give standing ovations to, but I don't know if those same people are then going to the local Democratic Party and saying, I want to become a precinct committee person. The other half of his message is, you're the revolution.
Yeah.
Right? It's not this elected guy that you're sending $25 to. He's not the revolution. And it doesn't, our Constitution doesn't have the word leader in it anywhere. It's one of the reasons that I'm frankly not all that concerned about a, quote, politician being president, as long as that politician is a Democrat. Because, the job of a politician, the principal job isn't to lead the country, it's to represent the country. It's to say, oh, the people want that. Okay, well, if that's a reasonable position and if it's consistent with my philosophical core, then I'm going to go in that direction. And so you've seen the entire Democratic Party shift on things like gay rights, for example, gay marriage, on a whole variety of issues just over the last decade. And I think this is a good thing. This is not flip-flopping. This is evolving. This is growing, and it's always going to depend on the strength of the base. It's always going to depend on the strength of the people at the quote bottom, who really, I think, in the mind of the people who put this country together, and most progressives today, really are at the top. We should invert the pyramid, right? And have an activist movement that doesn't just vote and send in $25, but also participates in party politics or outside of party politics. If you don't like being inside a political party, be inside a movement. And there's no shortage of them. From Black Lives Matter to like I said, MoveOn.org. Get out there, get involved. But just sitting around and complaining, I'm sorry.
I wish I had my applause track this morning, because I think that's so important. I didn't bring that device in with me this morning, but that's so important. And I try to say it to my audience since day one, is that I know from personal experience inside of the Democratic Party that in some counties it's well organized and, you're going to have to wait your turn. But in most counties, it is wide open, and they're begging. They're literally asking people to please come to the meeting and help support this local chapter. And the ascend to leadership it's almost overnight in most counties that I've been through. So I'm just glad to hear you echo that sentiment, that because I personally feel the Green Party. I like the Green Party. I like what they try to do. I like their policies, but I just understand on a national level, we're up against forces that we need an equal force. And so I've been trying to not necessarily convince my audience, but expose them to the fact that that we may not get what we want this time, but we have an opportunity to change that if we get active on that local level and on the movement level. So thank you so much for echoing that sentiment above all else.
And you can be in both. I mean, it's. I mean, you'd have to pick a voter registration sort of thing, but the Green Party at the local level has been doing amazing work. Not so much in the last 6 or 8 years, I don't think, but back a decade ago. I mean, they got over 300. I think it's now over 400 communities in the United States. The largest is San Francisco, to have instant runoff voting, which allows for multiple political parties to participate. That's something that we really need nationally. So, I mean, supporting Green Party efforts and in some cases supporting Green Party candidates is not an unreasonable thing to do. But right now at the level of national and state politics, basically what we need to do, those of us who might even think of ourselves as green. I voted for Ralph Nader in 2000. I've always been a supporter of the Green Party, as well as the Democratic Party. Those of us who think of ourselves as green need to infiltrate the Democratic Party and bring these things together.
Yeah.
Or at least philosophically. I mean, the Green Party as a phenomena exists in to a certain level in reaction to the corporatization of the Democratic Party. Well, let's uncorporatize it.